So people often ask me, why do you use this word missional? It sounds like such a strange word, and in a lot of ways it's a hard word to explain, but some very basic background. When we were writing the book, Missional Church, back in 1998, we were really discovering out of the tradition of people like Karl Barth and Leslie Newbigin and the missionary movements of the early 20th century, that church, the local church, doesn't have mission. So the word mission tends to get used for projects. So people go on mission trips and they do mission down at the rescue mission in the inner city or things like that. Or we send missionaries overseas. So in all of that, mission comes to sound like something that special people do, and it's one program alongside many others that the church does. And yet when you enter the biblical stories, the church is itself God's mission to the world. Everything that we are and do is God's mission. We are God's missionary people. So we were trying to find a word that would capture that, knowing that the word missionary had come to mean something different. That's why we chose the word missional. What's very important to understand is that missional is not about style of church. It's got nothing to do with whether you're a traditional church, a contemporary church, an emerging church, whatever the list is. Missional is not a style. And therefore, it doesn't mean if I'm a traditional church, I have to change and become something else. Missional church says, live into and love the richness of your tradition and your story and your particularity. In the midst of that richness and tradition, it's about asking the question, what is God doing in the neighborhoods and communities where we find ourselves, and how do we discover again the ways of joining with what God is doing? So please don't understand missional as requiring a traditional church to become something else. It's got nothing to do with style. I have seen high church Anglicans be very missional, and I have seen low church Baptists be very missional. Missional is not about changing who you are. It's about living deeply into your story and becoming God's missionary people in your communities again. Very often when people come to a seminar on missional church, they come with the idea that this is a new program that they've got to take and now put into their church. It is a new way of doing things. And so I'm very clear on the kind of advice I give to people. So I would say to a board, as you go back home, think about it in some of these ways. Don't go back home and announce that you found a new way. That just puts people off. Go back home and keep doing with excellence all the things that you have been called to do. Don't start changing lots of things, but do several things alongside of all that. Number one, begin to learn how to dwell in Scripture. Begin to learn again and again and again how to listen to God in Scripture. And at the seminar, I talked about some of the ways to do that. The second thing I talked about was find some small, simple ways in which you can begin to experiment around asking the question, what's God up to in the neighborhoods around about us, and how can we join with God? And you do simple experiments in learning to do that, so that this kind of missional transformation is not about, let's change our whole organization, let's change our traditions, let's change our programs. It's about, let's start where we are and just try some very simple experiments and discover what God is teaching us in the midst of that. There are varieties of levels of criticism or frustration that come from different directions. First of all, there will be fear amongst people in the church. And the fear is that everything's going to change. And you've got to respond to that by saying with integrity, we're not trying to change your programs or anything else like that. But on the other side, there will be the fear from sort of the people who want lots of change, that things aren't happening fast enough, or that all we're doing is talking and listening to one another. And so from both sides, you get pushback. And you've got to learn to live with those tensions and not give in to either one of them. That's one of the critical pieces in the midst of this. The third thing is that people hear this missional conversation in their heads, but they don't know what it looks like. And so much of this, particularly if you're a leader, is really built on trust and confidence in you as a leader. And you just have to understand that. And what that means is you can't be in a hurry. That becoming a missional church is not a project that you've got to get to along a set of timelines. It is learning a way of life together. And when you learn a way of life together, it is not about a timeline. It's about relationships and trust and maturity.
Für mich wäre jetzt wichtig zu erfahren, wie gehen die ersten Schritte eigentlich los? Und gerade weil wir in einer Gemeinde leben, die sich verändern muss für ihre Zeit, ist es für mich ganz außerordentlich wichtig, wie verändere ich zunächst mal die Menschen, die ihre Karten, wie er es gesagt hat, ihre Maps im Kopf haben, und wie kriege ich die da raus?
We are going to begin today in Scripture.
Wir werden diesen Tag mit der Bibel beginnen.
Wuppertal.
Everything you need.
Yeah, where's Wuppertal? Man, that would be great.